Hello and welcome to News Central Now. I am Dakbo Adigboye. The top stories at this hour. Nigeria Labour Congress, a trade union congress, suspend industrial action for 5 days. Nigerian Senator Abdul Ningi resumes plenary after 3 months suspension. Tigray capital slowly emerging from shadow of war. Details in a moment. The news at this hour begins in Nigeria, where members of the organized labor comprising the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress on Tuesday suspended their strike for 5 days. The centers are expected to issue a statement shortly before the commencement of negotiations with the government. The strike, which commenced on Monday, was called to protest at the failure of the federal government to approve new minimum wage by May 31st, as well as its failure to reverse the hike in electricity tariff. After a 6-hour meeting with the leadership of the organized labor in Abuja on Monday night, the federal government expressed the commitment of President Bola Tinubu to raising the 60,000 naira offered as the new minimum wage. According to the statement released, the President of Nigeria, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, is committed to establishing a national minimum wage higher than 60,000 naira, and the tripartite committee will convene daily for the next week to finalize an agreeable national minimum wage. Earlier, our correspondent Mekele spoke to us on this development.
Aviation union workers, they pretty much are gyrating in their own lingua about the suspension of the strike, 1 month suspension, and that's because unionists are in talks with the federal government. Now they say they are optimistic that their talks will yield positive responses, but within the time frame while these talks are ongoing, they are suspending the strike for 1 week. It's a suspension, it's not called off. So if that 1 week, if within that 1 week, their conversations are not favorable, then it's possible that the strike would resume again. But they say they are hopeful and they're optimistic that this strike will not resume, that from suspension eventually it will be called off. Now, we saw the MM2 gate being thrown open, and then passengers who were supposed to fly roll their luggage into the airport, and there was a lot of celebration after the announcement that the strike had been suspended for 1 week. We're in front of MM1 gate, and about the same thing is most likely going to happen here. The gate will be thrown open eventually after the announcement about the suspension of the strike for 1 week.
Also, labor law expert Iriolua Oguntuashe and public affairs analyst Jide Johnson spoke to us on this development.
This is a big subject matter of negotiation, and again, we need to consider the fact that the issue of minimum wage is a 5-year tenure. And when I say 5-year tenure, by the provision of the Minimum Wage Act, so what I mean is that once we have once government and labor, once they've agreed to a particular minimum wage now, it's going to take another 5 years, for there to be a review of the minimum wage. And the increase in salary within this period of time will mostly be a subject matter of discretion. So I think going by the length of time, that's one of the reasons, it may have taken long to have this particular agreement. And I think another reason we need to also consider is that apart from the federal government, several other important interests are also involved. I'm talking of the interest of the organized private sector and also interest of the state government. So these are the things the federal government are also looking at, in agreeing on the minimum wage.
Life of Nigerians, because everything was at a standstill. For most Nigerians, they didn't have access to power. Those that want to travel didn't have the opportunity of traveling through, because the aviation sector also joined in this particular strike, and a strong signal was sent by labor, which we have never had from labor for a very, very long time. And you could see the prompt response of the government in trying to address that particular problem. You saw that initially the Minister of Information and the Special Advisor to the President give a press conference, and then before you know it, a meeting was called for later in the evening. So it tells you that that the strike had its impact on the government, and government responded quickly by inviting them.
To discuss this further, we are joined by legal practitioner Liberus Oshoma. Liberus, thank you for joining me on the news. My first question, did this suspension come to you as a surprise I mean, given the time frame, it was suspended.
Yesterday, I made a post on my Facebook and Instagram wall, and then I said this strike. I used the local parlance. I said this strike tie wrapper, and a lot of the comments I got was, tie anything. That this is the usual labor. At the end of the federal government would negotiate with them, and they would suspend the strike, and then they will go back again, back and forth. And all of this wouldn't have happened really if the government had been consistent in complying with the Labor Act, which prescribed 5 years adjustment in the minimum wage. The last time the minimum wage was pegged at 30,000 minimum wage was more than 5 years ago. So in the government of President Muhammadu Buhari, all of that ought to have been addressed. And once that was addressed, this government would have inherited this labor crisis. Unfortunately, this government came on board. This government also came with its own hardship. Subsidies gone, while the citizens are subsidizing the lifestyle of politicians. The only thing you hear from national assemblies is last year and now it's a budget padding and national anthem change. And then all kinds of allegations of humongous, salaries and allowances. And why the people, the workers are struggling, to press the federal government and the state government also to pay a minimum wage higher than 30,000. And then while that is going on, electricity tariff was increased, about 500% increment. The forest was floated. Mind you, we don't produce anything here. Even the oil that we have, crude oil, we don't even refine it. So all of this added to the pressure on the meager salary of the average worker. But unfortunately, the saddest part is the fact that while the federal government and labor union are negotiating, who negotiates for the average, ordinary Nigerian worker? We're not talking about, the federal government employs about 18% of the total workforce in Nigeria. The state government also collectively do not take up to the remaining 50%. So the total workforce, so who now negotiate for the other 50% that is, either in the organized private sector or some of us that, are small and medium scale, enterprise, who negotiate on our behalf in terms of, the increment in foodstuff and the hyperinflation that is happening in the country. So these are the many challenges that I think this will be a recurrent decimal if the government does not address the deficit in infrastructure to stimulate the economy so that people will be able to produce. And once you have the private sector is organized, I can tell you that labor strike will not be as effective as we affect it now.
Still talking on the industrial action, what do you consider as maybe insights into the outcome of the 6-hour meeting between the federal government and the organized labor leadership? And what were the key points of, agreement and contention, you feel were pretty nutty or resonated with you, particularly with some saying that the demands of labor, talking about the figure, talking about 600 plus, is not reasonable and might even, result in hyperinflation?
I would say that that demand from day one had never resonated with me. Yeah, because the labor also know that it is unreasonable. Because taking us back to Doji Award, when you have more money in your hands, chasing fewer goods. And like I said earlier, we don't produce anything. So basically what you're going to do is you increase their salaries, you're also going to increase the prices of goods that have already been increased. And because you don't produce anything, if you earn more salary, your landlord will ask for more money. The tomato seller will also ask for more money when his landlord is asking for more money. Young workers will also ask for more money. At the end of the day, you create hyperinflation. There is more money in circulation. but fewer goods to buy. So what you're going to have, like we've had, was it during SAP, the only time we've had the highest rate of inflation, that's about 79% increase. So that's why for me, what we should focus more on is the infrastructural deficit. This structure of the bottle government that we operate, where everybody goes to the federal government, once, the federal government breathes, everybody catches cold. When you should focus on your local government, you are calling on the federal government to come to your aid. And then the labor is negotiating salary increase. It is the federal government and not the state governors. At the end of the day, the federal government can decide to pay 60,000, 70,000 naira, and not all governors will be able to pay 70,000 naira. So all of this should have been, if the country is properly structured, all of these negotiations should have even been at the local, the state level, and then the infrastructures are handled at the regional level. There won't be need for one huge negotiation where you have to shut down the entire country because you're negotiating a wage increase. Take the national grid, for example. For over time, a lot of people have been saying, let us decentralize, power. But what did we decentralize? What did we put in the hands of the private sector? Distribution. So generation and transmission. Transmission is still in the hand of the federal government, 100%. So anytime the federal government labor workers decide to go on strike, what do? They shut down transmission. Once you shut down transmission, the distribution companies are at a loss. They are private companies. They are at a loss. So if I am a prepaid meter, certainly I'm not going to pay bills for electricity I didn't consume. So there's a lot of multiplying effect. That is why we need to really look at the structure of the country and find a way to ensure that comply with the labor rules. Let there be holistic negotiations where not just the federal government will comply, and then some of these organizations that are behemoths, you don't just have them, have the monopoly of having the effect of shutting down the entire country. And the government need to also find a way of cutting costs to ensure that some of these costs that you cut, you plow it back into critical sector.
Talking about cutting costs, Liberals, talking about cutting costs. Now, what's your assessment of the President Bola Tinubu's commitment to establishing a national minimum wage higher than 60,000 naira? And what implications could this have, particularly not just on the economy, but also on the working living standards of Nigerians, including public servants? By public servants, I mean politicians that were, whether elected or appointed into office, where some Nigerians are also clamoring that they should earn the same figure as the minimum wage.
First and foremost, let's quickly understand minimum wage. Minimum wage does not mean that every worker is earning 60,000 naira. No, that's not minimum wage. Minimum wage, because a lot of people think once you say minimum wage, it means every worker earns that amount. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Minimum wage means that this is the barest debate that you can pay anybody. Any worker in government payroll should not earn anything less than 60,000 naira if that is the minimum wage. So you start from 60 and it graduates upward. So, but for me, the structure, I agree that the structure of salaries for public servants should also be fixed, just like the civil service rules. The salaries of civil servants are fixed. So the public servants, political appointment, their salary also should be tailored along the salary of the civil servant. It should be tailored along the civil service rules. So that's one way of cutting costs. And then also, so we all know what a civil servant earns, what a director earns in the federal civil service. It should also reflect in what a senator earns. And not a senator's take-home and allowances that, we just bandit figure, we really don't know. And then you have all kinds of perks, constituency project and, all of that. So what it does, it makes politics more attractive than the workforce. So you can't cut costs that way. And then this perks of office, the moment you become a politician, you're entitled to a policeman, you're entitled to a house. You retire as a governor, you're entitled to one house in Abuja, one in Lagos. The president's clothes, are bought for him. The wife, the children, the families are taken care of. The private jets or the presidential fleet, we no longer discuss them now. These are the same people that while they were in opposition, they told us that they were going to reduce the fleet. So all of these are ways of cutting costs. It's not just enough to say, oh, if I have 25 people going on a trip with me, I'll cut it down to 10 because of extra code of office. That is good. But then, what is the cost of the jet? Look at President Ruto of Kenya. He said he was to travel to America. And they came with a bill of 100 million shillings, from 100 million to 70 million. And he said it was too much for the Kenyan government. And so he reached out to his friends, and the friends said, well, how much are you willing to pay? He said he cannot pay more than 20 million shillings. And so they said, okay, bring 10 million, we'll contribute 10 million. That's how you cut costs. All this essay to the essay to the essay to the minister, and the number of ministers also is just too much.
All right, Level.
We don't, sometimes we don't know the numbers. We don't even know what some of them are doing. So these are ways of cutting costs. So you now have enough money to plow back into critical sectors. Then you don't need some persons breathing down your neck or calling off strike.
I believe this particular line of thought or conversation, would of course require more time. But this is the bit time can permit on the news. Once again,
it doesn't require much time to take those decisions. It's just the willpower. Thank you.
All right, Liberals Oshova, once again, thank you for your time on the news. Thank you.
Always my pleasure.
All right. Now, let's move away from labor matters. The senator representing Bauchi North Senatorial District, Senator Abdul Ningi, on Tuesday returned to plenary sessions following a 3-month suspension. The Senate had pardoned and recalled him, ending a suspension that began on March 12, 2024. Last week, Deputy Minority Leader Senator Abamoro moved a motion for Ningi's recall, expressing regret on his behalf and taking responsibility for his actions. The Senate President Godswill Akpabio subsequently announced Ningi's unconditional recall after pleas from some lawmakers. Ningi's suspension stemmed from a controversial interview where he alleged discrepancies in the 2024 budget, claiming that the National Assembly approved 25 trillion naira, while the presidency implemented 28.7 trillion naira. No fewer than 30 persons were found dead when a mining pit collapsed in Galkoko village in Shiroro local government area of Niger State. According to reports, the incident occurred late Monday night, and that one dead body had so far been evacuated, while 6 persons were rescued with injuries. The State Emergency Management Agency Public Relations Officer Ibrahim Hussein confirmed the incident, but the state's Ministry of Mineral Resources was yet to issue any official statement on the matter. We will, of course, keep an eye on this story and bring you up to speed. Now, let's also tell you that 3 persons have died following a tanker that exploded in the Obiri-Ikwere flyover along the east-west road in Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital, on Tuesday. The incident involved a tanker carrying what is believed to be liquefied natural gas, which fell over, crushed a vehicle and exploded while trying to navigate the roundabout. Confirming the incident in a telephone conversation, the police public relations officer Grace Iringe Koko said the victims were burnt beyond recognition when the tanker fell on the vehicle they were commuting. The impact of the explosion were felt kilometers away, as some of the residents said their windows were smashed, while others reported feeling the vibrations. This latest explosion is coming a month after a similar tanker exploded occurred along the Eleme axis of the same east-west road, which claimed 4 lives and destroyed over 60 vehicles. We'll go on a quick break now. When we return, we have more stories. Stay with us. Let's move to security matters. Following the timely intervention of the Abia State Governor, Alex Otti, in the killing of 5 soldiers in Aba, calm has returned to the city. The Army headquarters had threatened a reprisal in Aba due to the murder of their officers on May 30th. Now, News Central's Chinwe Ugele reports that the governor offered some welfare package to the families of the slain soldiers.
Who had gone to their duty posts on that fateful day, they were shot dead and have now left their wives as widows and children fatherless suddenly. Governor Alex Oti, while visiting the 144 Battalion of the Nigerian Army Asa Okwa West Local Government Area of Abia State to condole with the formation and widows of the slain soldiers, pledges sponsorship of the children of the deceased up to university level and assures that the perpetrators of the murder will be uncovered.
I'm not going to leave you alone. We know that the military high command would also look after you. But because your husbands died here in Abia, we have adopted you as daughters of Abia, and your children as children of Abia. To me, that we will smoke out whoever is remotely connected to this killing. Wherever they are, wherever they run to, we are going to work like we have always done, very closely with the security agencies.
The people have commended the governor for wading in and saving the situation.
Government should intervene because you cannot watch your brother being killed just for nothing's sake. And what they are doing there cannot remedy our problem. Let us call a spade a spade. You can't be killing innocent people in the name of what you are looking for.
Imagine if the soldiers were allowed to rampage Aba, how many people could have died? So the Abians should be grateful. We have somebody like Dr. Oti.
Brigade Commander 14th Brigade Ohafia Brigadier General Olushola Diya said the army will not relent until those directly or indirectly involved in the killing of the soldiers are found.
We are gathering as much intelligence as we can to ensure that all those involved in this act will be brought to book. We will retaliate.
Although economic and other social activities have returned to the Enyimba city, the people still live in palpable fear of the unknown. In Aba for News Central, Chinwe Ugile.
Amidst threats posed by the Islamic State West Africa Province terrorist group in Baga town, the Borno State Governor, Professor Babangana Zulum, has taken decisive action by convening a high-level security meeting in the town. The governor, accompanied by top security officials, spearheaded discussions aimed at formulating effective strategies to prevent attacks and protect vulnerable communities. News Central Somaru Kirawa reports on the unfolding development in the fish-producing Baga town.
Recent targeting of the town of Baga in Kukawa local government area of Borno State by insurgents, Governor Babagana Zulum underscored the urgent need for proactive measures to safeguard residents and prevent further displacement. Emphasizing the importance of preemptive action, the governor urged collaboration between security forces and local authorities to strengthen defenses and thwart potential threats.
Displacement has not taken place in Borno State for the last 4 years, and under no circumstances we shall allow Boko Haram to displace our communities again. So I'm here to discuss the matter with the Nigerian army and then see how possible best we can abort such situation that did not reoccur for the last 4 years. Yes, their strength are very weak, but they just want to, get cheap popularity. But I believe we have enough strength here in Baga and in Cross in order to address the issue of Kukawa.
In addition to bolstering security measures, Governor Babagana Zulum emphasized the critical role of community resilience in countering ISWAP's propaganda.
Zuwan shi mun yi murna kuma tsaro alhamdulillah har gwamna ya mana alƙawarin zai bude mana hanyar Chadi, in ya bude mana hanyar Chadi komai zai yi kiliya insha Allah, Allah kuma ya taimake mu.
Recognizing the psychological warfare waged by insurgents, the governor called for concerted efforts to empower communities with the necessary tools and information to resist extremist ideologies. The governor had an interactive sessions with farmers where plans are set to further boost farming activities in the area.
We are willing to resuscitate the South Chad irrigation scheme in Baga, but most importantly, we are here also to support the community. And I have directed that the farmers will be profiled so that they should be given agricultural input. We shall support them through the World Bank supported program, which is AgriSal and NG Cares, in addition to what we have.
The governor assured the communities of the government's support and commitment to protecting lives and property amidst the ongoing security concerns. In Baga for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Moving away from that, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has reaffirmed the commitment of the current administration to improve the quality of lives of citizens. The president, who was represented by the Vice President Kashim Shettima, made this known during the commissioning of the Outer Southern Expressway within the Federal Capital Territory. News Central's Amadine Uyi tells us more.
The Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, says that the project was first awarded about 11 years ago, but received attention following the mandate by the president to complete all abandoned projects.
This project was awarded in 2013. 11 years till now, we are battling how to make life easy for our people. And that is why the whole essence of the New Hope agenda, that we will make you feel comfortable, will bring back your hope. And this is what we are doing today. Mr. President said, every project uncompleted must be completed. And I thank God Almighty that we are doing that today.
He says that despite the difficulties faced in grappling with the cost of the project and the fact that it had increased over time, the administration was able to complete the project.
The cost of this project, as at when it was awarded, was 39.8 billion. But in 2021, it was revised to 59.9 billion. And it was not easy, knowing fully well what we do. Under the TSA, it was very, very difficult for us to have finished this project.
President Bola Tinubu, who was represented by the Vice President of the nation, reaffirmed the commitment of the current administration to improve the quality of lives of citizens.
The rehabilitation and expansion of the Outer Southern Motorway, otherwise known as O6, is another important achievement and a milestone for this government. Today, as I officially unveil this great road, I reaffirm my administration's dedication to enhancing the quality of life for all Nigerians. What is unfolding in our capital is a testament to what can be achieved with our government's renewed hope agenda of positive transformation for the FCT and indeed Nigeria.
He says that the road will fuel economic growth within the federal capital.
The expansion of the Outer Southern Motorway will not only alleviate traffic congestion and improve transportation, but will also stimulate economic growth and create opportunities for prosperity.
He also adds that the expressway will ease transportation, enhance connectivity, and improve accessibility within the capital. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
Coming up on the news, Tigray capital slowly emerging from shadows of war. We have details of this and more after now. Let's head to the east of the African continent, where roads are being rebuilt. Halted construction and buildings is back on track, and also shops and cafes are once again bustling in Tigray's capital, Mekele, after a peace deal finally ended one of the deadliest conflicts in recent years. Although Ethiopia's northmost region of Tigray is still gripped by a humanitarian crisis. The capital, Mekele, is slowly crawling back to normality 19 months after a peace deal ended one of the world's deadliest recent conflicts. The two-year war between Ethiopian federal forces and the Tigrayan rebel authorities killed as many as 600,000 persons by some estimates, forced several millions from their homes, and unleashed widespread hunger.
የልማት ስትራቴጂ ስራ ያለው በጣም ደስ የሚል ነገር ነው ማለት ከዚህ ሁሉ ጦርነት አልቆ ወደ ሰላም ወደ ልማት ብዙ ነገባ በጣም ደስ ይል ነው ይሄ አንድ ለውጥ ነው
ህዝቡም ያው በነበረበት ብዙ ችግርና ብዙ መንከራ ያሳልፈውን አሁን ትንሽ ፍታ ያገኘ ይመስላል ለወደፊቱ ያው እንደዚህ ብሎ ሰላሙ ከተገኘ
We're to the south of the continent, where South Africa's ruling African National Congress has lost its 30-year grip on an outright majority in parliament, according to official results announced on Sunday. The ANC secured only 159 seats in the 400-seat National Assembly, garnering 40% of the vote. The centre-right Democratic Alliance followed with 87 seats, amounting to 22% of the vote. And a surprising third place was the newly formed MK party, led by former President Jacob Zuma, which captured 14.59% of the votes and 58 seats. President Cyril Ramaphosa and leaders from most rival parties attended the results announcement, except for Zuma, who denounced the election as rigged and refused to participate. Ramaphosa acknowledged the election outcome, emphasizing the importance of respecting the electorate's decision. Now to discuss this, we are joined by the Executive Director, Center for Risk Analysis, Chris Hathin. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Dapo. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss South Africa's elections.
All right. Now, let's start off with this. What are the primary factors that contributed to the ANC losing its 30-year majority in the South African Parliament? And how have voters' sentiment shifted over the past few years?
So I think between 1994 and 2007, 2008, the ANC did remarkably well to increase living standards, to increase economic activity, to create space for the private sector to invest. And you saw as a consequence people's quality of life increasing. Those South Africans, black South Africans, who of course were excluded from economic activity throughout the years of the apartheid government and before that colonialist government. So the ANC did well for that sort of first decade, a little bit longer than a decade of democracy. And then from there you had the breakdown in governance, more issues around policy choices, less investment, less job opportunities and business opportunities being created. And over time, I think supporters and voters in general of the ANC have become frustrated with the status quo. You have unemployment perennially over 30%, youth unemployment over 70%. So even though the ANC remains the biggest party in the National Assembly, the fact that it has now declined from around 69% in 2004 to 40% now shows you how the trend has shifted over time. That doesn't mean voters automatically shifting to other parties, but they are very much becoming frustrated with how the ANC has governed, especially over the last 10 years when you had things like state capture, the breakdown of service delivery, persistent electricity outages. Those basic governance issues, I think, really have come to the fore.
Let's talk about one party that, just came out of the blues and sort of stole the show to a large extent. Talking about the MK party led by former President Jacob Zuma. How much of an impact will you say this party has, or it had in the just concluded election? And what does its performance indicate about the current political climate and voter preference in the country?
I think for the MK party, a lot of voters who would have voted ANC or for other parties, maybe like the Economic Freedom Fighters, they became frustrated with the political options on the table, and they had a positive connotation with former President Jacob Zuma, elements of loyalty towards him, towards his base, especially in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, which is majority Zulu speaking. That played a bit of a cause, I think, but also frustrations with the direction of the country, of the current ANC led by Cyril Ramaphosa, lots of internal tension around the direction and the way in which he chooses to lead the ANC. And former President Zuma, I think, exploited those frustrations. In the province of KwaZulu-Natal, MK came in at just around 45%, so blowing everyone else out of the water. The ANC declined to around 18% in that province, just behind the Inkatha Freedom Party, who pipped them for the second place in that particular province. So MK, their impact in the short term, no doubt massive, have a lot of weight now in the National Assembly in terms of coalition discussions, lots of those on the go at the moment. Medium to long term, we're not sure yet whether there's enough sustainability or longevity around MK, especially given that the party is so built around the personality and influence of former President Zuma. Should something to happen to him, he is more advanced in age now, some health concerns the last few years. Should something to happen to him, there are questions around whether the party has really built the necessary infrastructure and the necessary systems to be a force in South African politics over the medium to long term.
Now, what potential impacts could the ANC's loss of an outright majority have on South Africa's governance and policymaking, given the fact that there are talks about a coalition right now? How might this shift affect President Cyril Ramaphosa's administration and its ability to implement its agenda?
So no doubt a lot of pressure on the ANC at the moment. I think their own internal polling wouldn't have had them as low as 40%. So a lot of questions and pressures now within the party. What direction do they go if they go the coalition route? So they could go into coalition with the Democratic Alliance, maybe someone like the Inkatha Freedom Party. They could also go the route of a coalition with the MK Party and possibly the Economic Freedom Fighters. Those two parties generally seen as offshoots of the ANC, so more ideological agreements between those three parties. Now, all of these things factored into, of course, the ANC declining from 57% in 2019 to 40% now. So having to choose between maybe short-term expediency or long-term sustainability, all of that will impact on possibly a more tense National Assembly, more horse trading between politicians, coalitions around the world. Some of them function quite in a difficult manner, depending on the agreements that can be drawn up. And given that this is the first time in democratic South Africa's history that the ANC has come in below 50% in a national election, it's very much uncharted waters. So now the question is testing the constitution, testing agreements between coalition partners, seeing how sustainable it can be or not. There's a possibility, of course, that it could work out quite well. On the other hand, you could simply see more uncertainty, more unstable government, and as a result, your investor sentiment, your markets suffer a bit more.
All right. Just finally, before I let you go, Chris, considering Jacob Zuma's denunciation of the elections results as rigged, how credible are these claims, and what measures we are in place to ensure that the integrity of this poll, was actually protected, and how might these allegations affect the public trust when it comes to the country's electoral system?
You have seen over time voter registration and voter turnout in South Africa has declined. So you have a broader context where many South Africans feel maybe frustrated with the status quo, don't feel like the democratic process maybe is working for them. So there's a big consideration for political parties, for the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa to try and figure out and understand how to motivate South Africans to believe in that democratic system and to turn out and voice their opinions, use their votes. So that's the broader context. In terms of MK's allegations, in our view, the Independent Electoral Commission has dealt systematically and well with those objections, also those lodged by other parties where mistakes will definitely happen, but I think isolated incidents are not in and of themselves an indication of vote rigging or stealing the vote or anything like that. For a party like MK, the more things are in flux, the more things are uncertain, the more they remain relevant to the conversation and relevant to possible coalition calculations and considerations. So I think that's part of their calculus, and it's something to keep a close eye on, especially given, again, this unprecedented moment in South African history.
Chris Hatton, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Now, a South African man appeared in court on Tuesday, accused of stabbing to death a mother and of wounding her husband and son because of the family's pro-Palestinian views. 44-year-old Grayson Bear is charged with murder and 2 counts of attempted murder over the attack, which took place on Sunday in a suburb of the eastern city of Durban. A spokeswoman for the National Prosecuting Authority, Natasha, actually made this known, where she said that the woman died and her family members who were also alleged stabbed multiple times, were seriously injured. Detectives initially said the motive of the violence was not clear, but a 10-year-old survivor, understood to be the woman's daughter, told the investigators that the suspect stated that he was stabbing them because they supported Palestine. In the meantime, 12 persons have died in flooding caused by torrential rain on South Africa's eastern coast. A spokesperson from Nelson Mandela Bay municipality at the heart of the floods said the death toll is currently sitting at 7 in Eastern Cape Province. More than 2,000 persons have been evacuated from the area, notably from makeshift homes in the municipality's slums. 5 persons also lost their lives in the Elkwani Metro near the port city of Durban in neighboring KwaZulu-Natal province, which has been hardest hit. Now, the provincial government said in a statement that dozens of persons have been treated for injuries in healthcare facilities as rescue services were deployed in both affected provinces on Monday night. In Central Africa, Amnesty International on Tuesday voiced concern that Republic of Congo authorities are not doing enough to ensure industrial companies protect human and environmental rights in the communities where they live. Now, the rights group looked at oil spills and smoke emissions linked to the activities of Total Energies EP Congo, Wingwa and Matsa Congo, and their impact on the Pointe-Noire and Kulu departments that sit on the Atlantic coast. According to the group, many residents complained about the lack of information, adding that persons have reported health problems, particularly diarrhea, after eating fish from the lagoon. It also accused the authorities and companies of limiting the information they make public after environmental incidents. Right now, let's take some sporting news where we understand that the Nigeria Rugby Federation, Football Federation, has granted Edo State the privilege of hosting the 2024 National League for the South-South Zone, a significant achievement for the state known as the heartbeat of the nation. Teams from Delta, Rivers, Bayelsa, Akwa Ibom, Cross River, and Edo will vie for the zonal title and a spot in the National Super 6 final. This regional league is part of a broader competition spanning Nigeria's 6 geopolitical zones. The Edo State Rugby Association eagerly anticipates hosting this esteemed event, aimed to evaluate the sport's stature and development locally. The NRFF president, Dr. Ademola, had commended the State Rugby Association's leadership for their dedication and support. And of course, staying in the world of sports, the Super Eagles players who were stranded in Lagos and Abuja following their inability to get flights because of the labor union strike and now in Uyo, the nest of champions. Now, the camp buzzed with excitement as 5 stranded players, including Semi Ajayi, Bright Osei Samuel, Calvin Bassi, Frank Onyeka, and Paul Nwachu, were airlifted to Uyo via a private jet arranged by the Nigeria Football Federation. Arriving just in time for lunch, they joined their teammates, boasting the camp's roster to 20 players ahead of the qualifying clash with South Africa. Nigeria seeks redemption after their Africa Cup of Nations triumph, aimed for victory to stay competitive in Group C's race for a World Cup spot. And that's a wrap on the news at this time. But before we go, another look at some of our top stories. We told you that Nigeria Labour Congress, the Trade Union Congress, suspend industrial action for 5 days. Nigerian Senator Abdul Ningi resumes plenary after 3-month suspension. We also told you that Tigray capital slowly emerging from shadows of war. Don't forget to send in your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. You can also follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live across these platforms: DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Apple TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Dakbo at Digboy. Bye for now.